So a couple of friends of mine are recording a song right now, and they have asked me to record some keyboard parts because I happen to be a keyboard player. So I thought it would be interesting to show you my approach and some of the things that I do in order to record keyboard parts. So maybe it is interesting for somebody, maybe it is useful for somebody. So let's take a look, shall we? So I guess the first thing you should know is the equipment that I'm using. This is my studio, my home studio. This is your typical home studio, and honestly, there's nothing fancy about it, only the essential. And the essential, of course, is the computer, what you're gonna be recording with. I'm using my MacBook Pro, and obviously for keyboard parts, I need a keyboard. So this is my keyboard. This is my trusty Novation Launchkey 61. This is the Mark II, which means it has the green bottom. I've had this keyboard since, the beginning of time, and I bought it because it has a really cool workflow with Ableton. It has Ableton capabilities. Because I am an Ableton user, I bought this keyboard. That's the only reason behind it. And then you have the, I guess, not so essential things like my audio interface. This is a Complete Audio 6, the older version. And then I have my monitor speakers, which are PreSonus E5s. This is the older version as well. Then I have my keyboard and my mouse and the screen. As you can see in the screen, I am using Logic Pro. Honestly, Logic is not my weapon of choice anymore. I am more of an Ableton guy, which I use every single week to play in my church. But currently this project is being produced in Logic, so they sent me the Logic session, so I guess it was just easier to do everything in Logic. And I guess this is important to clarify because I guess I have taken a very Ableton-like approach in my workflow doing these keyboard parts. I have grown accustomed to a very essential functionality, which are called the macros and the racks in Ableton. In Ableton, there's this very cool feature which are called the macros. And essentially what you do is you map these controls to functions in your plugins or in your effects. So in this case, I can control the cutoff frequency and the filter, the amount of chorus, the amount of reverb, and the reverb decay. And I love to control this with the help of my Korg Nano Control 2, which I can physically move using these knobs, and you can move them in real time using the controls. The Logic counterpart of that is called the Smart Controls. These are the Smart Controls in Logic, which is, very similar. You map your plugin or your parameter you want to control to these. And luckily for me, this was automatically mapped to my Nano Control. So I can do the same workflow that I do in Ableton with the physical controls of the Nano Control 2. And this is very important for me because I can program automation in certain parameters of my sounds that I think sound very cool when you program them with physical controls. Instead of using the mouse, you can use your fingers and you can touch the controls. And then you end up with a very human musical way of moving the parameters, which I find really nice. As you can see, I have programmed the filter cutoff and the expression in a B3 plugin. And this was all done using my Nano Control. So the first thing that I do is I record the musical part using my keyboards. I make sure that everything is perfect. Maybe I get to edit some of the MIDI parts in the MIDI editor. And when I have that done, on top of that, I program the automation using my controls. The way that you do this in Logic is honestly very simple. Once you have your MIDI part done, you're gonna press A in the keyboard, and then you're gonna see the automation part of it. Then what I do is I go to this section, which is the automation mode, and then I go and select the latch mode. The way that I understand latch mode is basically what you move is getting recorded in the automation that you have selected, which is exactly what I want. So the only thing that I need to do is press record, and then using my controller, I can automate the part as I'm listening the musical part. And then as you can see, you have, the changes and the automation the way that you like it. So instead of trying to do both things at the same time, trying to get the musical part and then trying to get the automation right, you divide that in 2 stages. So it is more likely to get those 2 stages right. So once you have your automation right, you're just gonna switch back to read mode. And what it is going to do, it is going to read the automation that you just wrote. Once I am done doing my recordings, what I want to do is I want to export them as audio files. This way I can send those files to my friends and they can import those files to their own sessions without having to worry about not having the same plugins or the same libraries that I do. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that they have the same range or the same length in the files, so that everything that they have to do is just put my files in the beginning of the session, and then everything is gonna be synced. So the way that you do that in Logic is you're gonna select all the files that they sent to me, which are these. Then I'm going to press Command A to select all the regions. And then what I wanna do is I'm going to press Command and U. And this way is going to select the range in this yellow bar, which is called cycle range in Logic. Having this, I'm going to select the tracks that I recorded or the tracks that I want exported. In my case, these are the 3 files that I want to export. They have all the plugins and the effects that I want to export with. I'm going to File, Export, and then I'm going to select 3 tracks as audio files, or you can just press Command and E. This little window is going to appear, and then you're going to select Export Cycle Range Only as your range. This is very important, which is the yellow tab that it is appearing here. Then I'm going to save it as an WAV file. And the bit depth is going to be 24. And then I'm just going to export them in a folder, and that folder is going to be sent to them via WeTransfer or Dropbox or whatever thing you want to use. So this is the workflow that I always do when I'm recording music. If you have questions about the things that I just mentioned, please comment down below so that I can answer them. See you next time.